Hey everyone! In this lecture, we're going to talk about adolescent depression and anxiety. These are issues that can seriously affect your life, but the good news is they're also treatable. Today, we'll break down what these conditions are, how you can spot the signs in yourself or your friends, and what you can do to get help. Here's what we're going to cover today. First, I'll explain what depression and anxiety really are, especially in teenagers. Then we'll go over how to recognize the signs, either in yourself or in someone else. I'll also share some places where you can get help if you need it. And finally, I want you to remember that having depression or anxiety is not your fault. They're more common than you might think, and help is available. Let's talk about depression. This isn't just about feeling sad for a day or two. Adolescent depression is when you feel really down, discouraged, or lose interest in things you usually enjoy, like sports, hobbies, or hanging out with friends. This can last for weeks and affects how you think, feel, and act. Depression can be triggered by a lot of things. It could be the normal stress of growing up, conflicts with your parents, the death of someone you care about, breaking up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, failing a class, or even ongoing issues like being bullied or dealing with a chronic illness. Understanding what can cause depression helps us to spot it early. Depression shows up in different ways. You might feel sad or irritable most of the time, lose interest in things you used to love, have changes in your weight, or have trouble sleeping. You might feel tired all the time, have low self-esteem, feel guilty for no reason, or even have unexplained aches and pains. If this sounds familiar and lasts for more than a couple of weeks, it's important to talk to someone. Let's look at some numbers. About 19 million Americans deal with depression every year, and over 2 million of them are under 18. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get help because they feel embarrassed or think they should just tough it out. But depression isn't a sign of weakness. It's a health issue, just like any other, and it needs treatment. If depression isn't treated, it can lead to some pretty serious problems. You might start doing worse in school, lose friends, or even run away from home. Some teens turn to alcohol or drugs to cope, or develop eating disorders like anorexia or bulimia. Others might start self-harming, taking unnecessary risks, or even thinking about suicide. That's why getting help early is so important. The good news is that the vast majority of teens who get help for depression start to feel better. Treatment can include talking to a counselor or therapist, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which helps you change negative thought patterns, and sometimes medication. Even things like regular exercise can make a big difference. One of the most severe risks associated with untreated depression is suicide. Some warning signs to be aware of include talking about worthlessness, a sudden shift to a calmer or happier demeanor during a depressive episode, talking about dying, especially discussing a plan for how someone would die by suicide, listening to music that focuses on death, making arrangements or getting one's affairs in order, and giving away precious possessions. These signs should always be taken seriously, and you should seek help right away. If you think you or a friend might be dealing with depression, it's really important to reach out to them. It is important to make connections and show others that you care about them. If you aren't sure how you can help or you are concerned, you can talk to your school guidance counselor, your parents, or another trusted adult. And if someone is suicidal, don't wait. Seek help from a trusted adult. Go to your local emergency room or call 911. There are also other resources in the area like Howard Center's First Call of Chittenden County, which can be reached at 802-488-7777. Now let's switch gears and talk about anxiety, which is another issue that a lot of teens face. As we discussed last week, everyone feels stressed sometimes, right? But when the stress gets to be too much to handle, it can turn into anxiety. Anxiety is when your body's response to stress becomes too overwhelming and starts to interfere with your daily life. Anxiety can look different in everyone. Some people worry a lot, feel really down, or have negative thoughts that won't go away. Others might start avoiding school, get into arguments more easily, or even experiment with drugs or alcohol. It's important to know when these behaviors might be a sign of something more serious than just normal teenage stress. Anxiety happens when you overestimate how bad a situation is and underestimate your ability to handle it. It's like constantly worrying about things that might go wrong, even when there's no real reason to be so concerned. There are different types of anxiety disorders. Some teens might have generalized anxiety disorder, where they worry about a lot of things all the time. Others might have panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, or specific phobias. Anxiety can also be linked to conditions like OCD or PTSD. Anxiety often follows a cycle. Stress leads to negative thoughts, which cause physical symptoms like a racing heart or feeling sick. This can make you want to avoid certain situations, which only makes the anxiety worse over time. It's a tough cycle to break, but it's possible with the right help. During your teenage years, your brain is still developing, which can sometimes make anxiety worse. You might feel like everyone is watching you, or like no one else understands what you're going through. You might also be more idealistic, or get into more arguments as you try to figure things out. It's important to know the difference between healthy and unhealthy thoughts. It's okay to feel upset about a pimple, for example, but if it leads to avoiding people or constantly worrying, that's a sign of an unhealthy thought pattern. Learning to recognize and change these thoughts is a big part of managing anxiety. One of the best ways to manage anxiety is through cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT helps you understand how your thoughts affect your feelings and behaviors. It's all about learning to think in a more balanced way, and it can include things like setting goals, practicing self-talk, and gradually facing your fears. Cognitive restructuring is a technique used in CBT where you challenge negative thoughts and replace them with more realistic ones. For example, if you're thinking, "I can't handle going to school," cognitive restructuring would help you realize that you've managed before and can do it again, even if it's tough. Socratic questioning is another CBT tool. It's about asking yourself questions to challenge your negative thoughts. For example, what evidence do I have that this thought is true? Or, is there another way to look at this? This helps you break down irrational thoughts and see things more clearly. Exposures are about gradually facing the things you're afraid of, instead of avoiding them. You start small, with something manageable, and work your way up to more challenging situations. This helps you build confidence and reduces anxiety over time. Coping statements are positive things you tell yourself to help manage anxiety. Statements like, "I can handle this," "This is temporary," or "I've got this," can really help when you're feeling overwhelmed. The more you practice these, the more automatic they become. Part of dealing with anxiety is learning to tolerate distress. This means accepting that some things will be uncomfortable or uncertain, but knowing you can handle it. It's about building resilience and not letting anxiety control your life. There are also other tools that can help manage anxiety, like family therapy, creating an anxiety timeline, using techniques like wise brain versus worry brain, and practicing mindfulness or meditation. These can be really helpful in reducing anxiety and keeping it under control. To wrap up, I want to remind you that both depression and anxiety are serious, but they're also treatable. If you're struggling, don't keep it to yourself. Talk to someone and get the help you need. Remember, you're not alone and there's always hope for things to get better. Thanks for listening and take care of yourselves.